I was finishing the third row of cable knit when my phone rang. The burgundy yarn, Lily's favorite color, slipped between my fingers as I reached for the device, careful not to drop a stitch. I'd been working on this sweater since August, stealing hours between volunteer shifts at the library and my morning walks with David. 73 hours so far, if my log was accurate. Each stitch a small act of love for a granddaughter who deserved something made just for her. "Helena, honey," I answered, tucking the phone between my shoulder and ear. "I was just thinking about you. I found your grandmother's gravy boat in the attic yesterday, the one with the gold rim. I thought we could use it this year for—" "Mom?" Her voice had that edge to it, that careful, controlled tone that meant she was about to deliver news I wouldn't like. I'd heard it before, when she told me she was skipping family dinner for a work event, when she explained why the kids couldn't visit over spring break, when she mentioned casually that Brandon's mother would be joining us for Easter. My hands stilled on the soft wool. Through my kitchen window, I could see Mrs. Patterson next door hanging her autumn wreath, a beautiful thing with dried orange slices and cinnamon sticks. Normal. Everything still normal. The maple tree in my yard was losing its leaves right on schedule, carpeting the grass in gold and crimson. November, in its full glory. "What is it, sweetheart?" "Brandon and I need to talk to you about Thanksgiving." My heart did that small, treacherous skip it always did when she said Brandon and I, instead of just calling it family dinner. As if her husband was a separate unit, a foreign country she'd emigrated to, speaking a different language than the one I'd taught her. "Of course," I said, keeping my voice light. "What time should I come over? I was thinking of bringing the turkey early so I can get it in your oven by 9. That way it'll be ready by— Actually, we've decided to do something different this year." I set down the sweater, giving her my full attention. Lily's half-finished sleeve lay across my lap like an abandoned promise. "Different how?" A pause. I could hear her breathing, that little cat she'd had since childhood when she was working up to something difficult. When she was 7, it was confessing she'd broken my mother's teacup. When she was 16, it was asking if she could go to prom with a boy I'd never met. Now at 42, what was she working up to? "We're doing an adults-only Thanksgiving this year," she said finally. "Very formal. Wine pairings, sophisticated dishes. Brandon's invited some of his firm partners. It's really not going to be appropriate for everyone." The silence stretched between us like pulled taffy, sweet at first, then painful. "I'm an adult, Helena." She laughed. That light, dismissive laugh she'd picked up somewhere. Maybe from Brandon, maybe from his mother Eleanor, maybe from that life she'd built in the big house on Willowbrook Drive with its manicured lawn and its 3-car garage and its kitchen that cost more than my first house. "You know what I mean, Mom. It's going to be very formal, very curated. Brandon has some important clients coming, and we really need to make the right impression. Eleanor will be there, obviously, and you know how she is about—" She trailed off. "About what?" "About presentation. Everything has to be perfect." I looked down at the burgundy sweater. 73 hours of imperfect stitches, of dropped cables I'd had to carefully repair, of love that didn't care about perfection. I thought about the album on my coffee table. 42 Thanksgivings, one for each year of Helena's life. 42 years of turkey and stuffing and pumpkin pie. 42 years of traditions. The first photo, Helena at 6 months, wearing a tiny turkey bib, sweet potato smeared across her face. Age 3. Helena's first time helping in the kitchen. She stirred the cranberry sauce and said it looked like rubies. Age 7. Sarah asked for extra marshmallows on sweet potatoes. I gave her the whole bag. She tried to eat them all before dinner. We laughed until we cried. Age 12. Helena helped roll pie crust for the first time. So proud of her. She said, "When I grow up, I want to cook just like you, Mom." "But I'm your mother," I heard myself say. The words came out smaller than I intended. "Exactly, which is why I knew you'd understand." Her voice softened, but not in a kind way. In a pitying way. The way you talk to someone you're trying to let down gently. "Maybe next year we can do something more casual, more traditional. This year just needs to be different. Traditional. Like the 42 Thanksgivings I'd hosted for her. Like the recipe book I'd started when she was born, adding a new dish every year, writing notes in the margins about what she loved, what made her laugh, what became our thing. Helena, I've already started preparing, I says. I've been working on the kids' sweaters since August. Lily's is almost done. I have your grandmother's pie recipe ready, the one you always said was your favorite. I've ordered the turkey from Miller's farm, the 24-pound one because you mentioned Brandon's parents might come, and that's actually another thing. My stomach dropped. I knew that tone. That careful, diplomatic tone she used in her job as a real estate attorney when she was about to tell a client something they didn't want to hear. Your home cooking is wonderful, Mom. For what it is. She paused, and in that pause, I could feel something breaking. But we've hired a professional caterer from Portland. Someone who studied at Le Cordon Bleu. We really need everything to be, how do I put this, more sophisticated. I sat down at my kitchen table, the same table where Helena had done her homework, where I'd taught her to knead bread when she was 10, where we decorated Christmas cookies every December for 20 years. The table my husband Jack had built before he died, sanding it smooth with his own hands, telling me it would last forever. Not sophisticated enough, I repeated quietly. Don't take it personally, Mom. It's just a different style than what you do. Your cooking is very comfort food, nostalgic. But Brandon's clients expect something more elevated. And Eleanor, she sighed. Eleanor has very specific ideas about proper entertaining. You know how she is. I did know. I'd met Eleanor Pierce exactly 4 times. Each time she'd looked at me the way you might look at a stain on an expensive carpet, something unfortunate that needed to be covered up. At Helena and Brandon's wedding, she'd introduced me to her friends as the bride's mother, without using my name, as if my identity began and ended with my relationship to Helena. What about the kids? I asked. Can I at least see Lily and Noah? They'll be there, obviously. It's Thanksgiving. But like I said, it's a formal affair. Late dinner, adult conversation. It'll run past their bedtime. They won't really be part of the evening. She paused. You'd be bored, Mom. Really. There it was. The real message underneath all the pretty words. You're not sophisticated enough. Your food isn't good enough. You don't fit into the life we've built. I looked at the sweater in my lap. Lily's sweater. Light blue like her eyes, with tiny snowflakes embroidered around the collar, because she'd told me last Christmas that she loved how snow looked like tiny pieces of stars falling down. I'd spent 3 weeks researching the right embroidery technique to make them look delicate enough, real enough. I understand, I heard myself say. I knew you would. You're always so reasonable, Mom. That's one of the things I appreciate about you. You never make things difficult. She sounded relieved, grateful even. Listen, I have to run. Brandon and I have a tasting with the caterer in 20 minutes. We're deciding between duck confit and beef Wellington. Can you imagine? It's so exciting. Sounds lovely, I said, my voice flat. Love you, Mom. I'll call you next week about Christmas plans. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there for a long time, holding the phone, looking at the sweater, at the photo album I'd been carefully updating, at the yellowed recipe cards in my grandmother's handwriting that I'd pulled out last week to start planning the menu. 42 photos, 42 years, each one labeled in my careful handwriting, each one a memory of laughter and burnt rolls and chocolate-covered faces and the sticky warmth of family gathered around a table. When had that stopped being enough? The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I wiped my eyes quickly, when had I started crying, and went to answer it. David Thornton stood on my porch, holding a canvas bag full of apples. The late afternoon sun caught the silver in his hair, and he was smiling that gentle smile that had become familiar over the past 6 months. He'd moved into the blue house next door in May, a widower like me, retired from teaching high school English like me, looking for a quieter life after his wife Margaret passed away. We'd fallen into an easy friendship over shared cups of coffee and gardening advice. He'd helped me prune my rose bushes in June. I'd brought him soup when he caught a summer cold in July. We'd discovered we both loved crossword puzzles and old movies and the particular quiet of early morning when the world was still gentle. "From your tree," he said, gesturing to the bag. "The wind knocked down quite a few last night. I thought you might want them for Thanksgiving pies. You mentioned that was your specialty." He stepped into my foyer and took one look at my face. His smile faded. "Margot, what happened?" I meant to say nothing. I meant to smile and thank him for the apples and send him on his way. But something in his eyes, that steady, patient kindness, broke whatever dam I'd built. "Come in," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'll make coffee." We sat at the kitchen table and somehow I told him everything. About the phone call. About adults-only Thanksgiving. About my cooking not being sophisticated enough. About 3 months of preparation. The sweaters, the menu planning, the special order turkey, the album. For a Thanksgiving I wasn't invited to. David listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, his hands wrapped around his coffee mug. "That's absurd," he said finally, but his voice was gentle, not angry. "You're her mother. She's busy. Her life is different now." I picked up Lily's sweater, running my fingers over the soft wool. That big house, Brandon's career, private schools for the kids, Eleanor Pierce with her country club friends and her ideas about proper everything. I don't fit into that picture anymore. "So what are you going to do?" I looked at him, at this kind man who'd lost his wife 2 years ago, who told me once, late at night over wine on my back porch, that he'd spent last Thanksgiving eating a frozen dinner alone in front of the TV. Who'd mentioned just last week that the hardest part of holidays was the silence. Not the absence of Margaret exactly, but the absence of purpose, of being needed, of having someone to cook for. "I don't know yet," I said slowly, "but I'm not going to let all this preparation go to waste." The idea started forming then, small at first, fragile as a soap bubble, but it grew as I looked around my kitchen, at the table that could seat 8, at the china cabinet full of my mother's dishes that never got used, at the recipe cards and the cookbooks and the apron hanging on its hook. I thought about Helena's words. "You'd be bored, Mom. Really." And I thought, no, I wouldn't be bored. I'd be heartbroken. But I don't have to be either. "David," I said slowly, "when you were alone last Thanksgiving, what would it have meant to you if someone had invited you to a real dinner, a real family meal?" He looked at me carefully. "Everything," he said quietly. "It would have meant everything." I stood up, sudden energy flooding through me. "Then let's give that to someone else. Help me figure out who needs a Thanksgiving dinner, who's alone, who's struggling, who can't go home." I was already moving toward my laptop, my mind spinning. The community college closes for the holiday. All those international students can't fly home. And the women's shelter, surely they have families who need somewhere to go. And right here in our neighborhood, there must be people like you were last year, people eating frozen dinners alone. David stood too, and I saw something light up in his eyes. "You're serious?" "Completely serious." I looked at him, and for the first time since Helena's call, I felt something other than hurt. I felt purpose. "I have a menu planned. I have a 24-pound turkey on order. I have 3 different pie recipes ready to go. Why should all of that go to people who don't want it when there are people who do?" "What about Helena?" I thought about my daughter, about her formal dinner and her sophisticated caterer, and her need to impress people who judged her based on tablescapes and wine pairings. "Helena made her choice," I said. "I'm making mine." The next morning I stood in front of the community college bulletin board with a handwritten notice and a roll of tape. My hand trembled slightly as I positioned the paper. "Thanksgiving dinner for students who can't go home. Traditional home-cooked meal. Free. Limited spaces. If you're far from family and facing a lonely holiday, you're invited to share ours. Please call 503-555-0147. I added my phone number at the bottom and stepped back. The board was covered with notices, textbooks for sale, roommates wanted, tutoring services, but my little flyer looked small and vulnerable among them. Would anyone even call? My phone rang before I made it back to my car. Hi, is this about the Thanksgiving dinner? A young woman's voice, hesitant. I saw your flyer. Is it real? It's real, I said, smiling. What's your name, honey? Rachel Torres. I'm a second-year medical student. I'm from California, but I can't afford to fly home this year, and her voice cracked. I haven't had a real Thanksgiving in 4 years. Well, you have one now, I said firmly. Can I get your number? I'll text you the details. After I hung up, I sat in my car for a moment, hands on the steering wheel. One guest, one person who actually wanted to be there. It was a start. By Wednesday morning, my list had grown to 14 people. Rachel had called back with 2 friends, James, an engineering student from Nigeria, and Li Wei, a computer science major from China. I'd contacted the women's shelter and connected with their director, who gave me the names of 2 families who needed somewhere to go. Maria Rodriguez, a single mother with 2 young children escaping an abusive situation. Ashley Brooks, a woman rebuilding her life with her 7-year-old son. I'd knocked on doors in my neighborhood, feeling foolish at first, then increasingly determined. Grace Patterson, 3 houses down, had answered with flour on her hands and tears in her eyes when I explained. I haven't had Thanksgiving with people in 5 years, she'd said. My kids live overseas, one in London, one in Sydney. I was planning to heat up a lean cuisine and watch the parade by myself. Robert Sullivan, the Vietnam veteran who lived on the corner in the small brick house with the immaculate lawn, had hesitated when I invited him. I don't want to impose, he'd said. My wife Betty passed in October. I'm not sure I'd be good company. You don't have to be good company, I'd told him. You just have to show up. He'd nodded slowly. Can I bring wine? Betty always insisted on bringing wine. That would be lovely. The young couple from down the street, Jennifer and Tom Hayes, had looked at each other with such relief when I invited them that I'd almost cried right there on their doorstep. We've been arguing for 3 weeks about whose family to visit, Jennifer had admitted, bouncing their 3-month-old daughter. My parents are in Ohio, his are in Texas. We can't afford both trips, and we're so tired and... She'd stopped, overwhelmed. Come to mine, I'd said. No travel required. And bring the baby. I miss having little ones around. Now, on Wednesday afternoon, David and I were setting up tables in my backyard. The November air was crisp, but not cold, and the forecast promised a clear day for Thursday. We'd borrowed folding tables and chairs from the church, and I'd pulled out every tablecloth I owned, mismatched but clean, a patchwork of past holidays. Where do you want this one? David asked, carrying another chair. Next to the main table. I want everyone close together. Not separate groups, one big family. He set down the chair and looked at me. You know what you're doing is remarkable, right? I was spreading a cream-colored tablecloth, smoothing out the wrinkles. I'm just making too much food. Nothing remarkable about that. No, he came over, gently taking the edge of the tablecloth to help me. You're turning pain into generosity. That's remarkable. I looked up at him, at the kindness in his eyes, and felt my throat tighten. I keep thinking about what Helena said, that I'd be bored, that I don't fit. I laughed, but it came out shaky. Maybe she's right. Maybe I don't fit into her world anymore. Then maybe her world is too small, David said quietly. Thursday morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through my bedroom window. I woke at 5:30, like I had every Thanksgiving morning for 43 years. For a moment, lying there in the early quiet, I felt the old, familiar anticipation. Then I remembered. This year was different. I got out of bed and looked at myself in the mirror. 68 years old. Gray hair that I'd stopped coloring 2 years ago. Lines around my eyes and mouth. Hands that were starting to show age spots despite the hand cream I used religiously. I thought about Helena, probably still asleep in her king-sized bed in her perfect house, not worrying about cooking because someone else was handling it. Someone sophisticated. Someone who went to Le Cordon Bleu. I thought about Eleanor Pierce, who would wake up in Helena's guest room and probably comment on something, the thread count of the sheets, the water pressure in the shower. Some small thing that Helena would take as criticism and try to fix. Then I opened my closet and pulled out the dress, the one I'd bought specifically for Helena's dinner party. Navy blue with a delicate floral pattern, 3/4 sleeves, hitting just below the knee. I'd saved for 2 months to afford it, had tried it on 3 times in the store before convincing myself it was worth it. I'd wanted to look sophisticated enough, good enough, like I belonged. I put it on now, not for Helena, but for myself, for my guests, for the celebration I was choosing. The face that looked back at me in the mirror wasn't sophisticated by Eleanor Pierce's standards, but it was honest, real, mine. I went downstairs and started cooking. By 1 o'clock, my kitchen looked like a beautiful disaster. Every counter was covered, the turkey, golden and glistening, resting under foil. 3 pies cooling on the windowsill. Sweet potato casserole with marshmallows ready to go in the oven. Green bean casserole assembled. Cranberry sauce made from scratch, deep red and studded with orange zest. Stuffing seasoned with sage from my garden. Parker House rolls rising under a clean dish towel. The whole house smelled like childhood, like memory, like home. Rachel arrived at 1:45, 15 minutes early. "I was too excited to wait," she said, hugging me at the door. She was small and pretty, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes that looked like they hadn't had enough sleep in months. "Can I help? Can you set out the name cards?" I handed her the stack I'd made, each one carefully handwritten, even though I'd only met most of these people once or never. 1 at each place. Rachel's eyes filled with tears as she looked at her name card. "No one's done something like this for me since I left home." "Well, someone's doing it now." At 2 o'clock, they started arriving. James and Lee Wei came together, both looking young and a little overwhelmed. James carried a bottle of sparkling cider. "My grandmother always said never come to someone's home empty-handed," he explained. Grace Patterson brought her promised Chardonnay and a basket of dinner rolls she'd baked that morning. "I couldn't just bring wine," she said. "I had to contribute something." Robert Sullivan arrived in a black suit that looked like it had been carefully pressed, carrying a bouquet of yellow roses. "Betty's favorite color," he said quietly, handing them to me. "She would have wanted you to have them." Maria Rodriguez came with her 2 children, a girl about 5 and a boy about 3, both clutching stuffed animals and staring at everything with wide eyes. Maria herself looked nervous, like she might bolt at any moment. "You're safe here?" I told her quietly as I took her coat. "And you're welcome here." Ashley Brooks and her son arrived next, then Jennifer and Tom with baby Emma, who was mercifully asleep in her carrier. By 2:30, 14 people filled my backyard, sitting at the tables David and I had arranged. The afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows across the tablecloths. Candles flickered in my grandmother's brass holders. The autumn leaves I'd scattered down the center of the tables rustled in the gentle breeze. I looked at the scene. Strangers and neighbors, young and old, people from different countries and different stories all gathered in my little backyard, and felt something settle in my chest, something that had been anxious and tight since Helena's phone call. This was right. David appeared at my elbow. "Ready?" he asked softly. I nodded. "Let's eat." We brought out the food together, me and David, with Rachel and Grace helping, platters and bowls and serving dishes, a parade of abundance. I watched my guests' faces as each dish appeared. Lee Wei's eyes widening at the turkey, James grinning at the sweet potato casserole, Maria's children bouncing in their seats. When everything was on the table, I stood at the head, hands trembling slightly. "I'm not good at speeches," I said, "but I want to say something before we eat." The table quieted. 14 faces turned toward me. "Last week, I thought I'd be spending today somewhere else, with people I've spent every Thanksgiving with for 42 years. I paused, feeling the words catch. But things changed, and instead of dwelling on what I lost, I decided to focus on what I could give. I looked around the table. Each of you is here because you needed somewhere to go, but I need you to know I needed you just as much, I needed to remember that the value of a meal isn't in how sophisticated it is. It's in who you share it with. It's in the connection, the conversation, the simple act of breaking bread together. Rachel was crying. Grace had her hand over her mouth. Robert was staring down at his plate, jaw tight. "So thank you," I sassy said, my voice breaking. "Thank you for being here. Thank you for letting me feed you. Thank you for reminding me that I have something to offer, even if it's not sophisticated enough for some people." "It's perfect," Rachel said fiercely. "This is perfect." We ate, and oh, how we ate. James tried the sweet potato casserole and let out a laugh of pure delight. "In my country, we never put marshmallow on yam. This is it's like candy and vegetables had a beautiful baby." Li Wei, carefully tasting each dish, kept saying incredible in English, and something in Mandarin that sounded appreciative. When I asked what it meant, he smiled. "It means tastes like love. That's what my grandmother used to say about holiday food." Maria's daughter, Sophia, whispered to her mother in Spanish. Maria translated, "She wants to know if she can have extra marshmallows." "Absolutely," I said and handed Sophia the entire dish. The little girl's face lit up like I'd given her the moon. Robert Sullivan ate slowly, deliberately, savoring each bite. Halfway through the meal, he set down his fork and looked at me. "Betty made stuffing exactly like this," he said, his voice rough. "Sage and celery and that slightly crispy top. I didn't think I'd ever taste it again." He paused. "Thank you for bringing her back, just for a moment." He didn't cry, but he squeezed my hand and I squeezed back. Grace Patterson told stories about Thanksgivings past, when her kids were small, before they scattered across the globe. "I forgot what this felt like," she said. Being part of something. Belonging somewhere, even just for a day. Jennifer managed to eat one-handed while nursing baby Emma, looking more relaxed than when she'd arrived. Tom kept refilling her water glass, cutting her turkey for her, and I watched them move together with the easy coordination of new parents learning their rhythm. Rachel sat between James and Li Wei, and the three of them debated the merits of each pie. Would it be apple, pumpkin, or pecan? They argued good-naturedly, like old friends instead of people who'd met 3 weeks ago. Then I thought, this is what Thanksgiving is supposed to be. Not impressing clients, not proving anything to anyone. Just this, the simple, profound act of sharing food and time and presence. I was in the kitchen cutting more pie when my phone rang. The name on the screen made my stomach drop. Helena. I almost didn't answer. My hands were covered in pie filling. My apron was stained, and I was happy, genuinely happy, for the first time in days. Did I want to let her voice into this moment? But something, habit, hope, mother's instinct, made me wipe my hands and pick up. Mom, where are you?" Her voice was strained, high-pitched, panicked. "I'm at home, honey, having Thanksgiving dinner." "What?" But I thought, never mind. "Listen, Mom, I need you to get over here right now. Can you bring your pumpkin pie? And if you have any turkey left." "Helena, slow down. What's wrong?" "What's wrong?" Her laugh was borderline hysterical. "What's wrong is that the caterer's food is inedible, pretentious garbage. The duck confit is raw in the middle, the beef Wellington is overdone, and some kind of foam thing collapsed all over the table. Eleanor invited 8 more people without telling us, so there isn't even enough food, and everyone's starving. And Brandon's clients are here expecting an actual meal. And I just..." Her voice cracked. "Can you please come? Please? And bring whatever you have?" I walked to my kitchen doorway, phone in hand, and looked out at my backyard. At the tables full of people who'd wanted me there. At Rachel teaching Sophia and her brother how to fold napkins into swans. At Robert and David deep in conversation about something that was making them both laugh. At Grace serving pie to everyone, her face animated in a way that suggested she hadn't felt this useful in years. At people who'd said thank you and meant it, who'd asked for recipes, who'd made me feel like my not sophisticated enough cooking was actually a gift. "I can't," I said calmly. Silence. Then, "What do you mean you can't?" "I mean, I'm having Thanksgiving dinner, Helena, with people who wanted me here." "What people?" Her voice sharpened. Who's there? Mom, don't be difficult. This is important. Brandon's career depends on this impression. We need you. We need you. Not we want you. Not we miss you. Not we made a terrible mistake. We need you. You needed a caterer, I said. You got one. Mom! I could hear Brandon's voice in the background, sharp and angry, saying something I couldn't make out. Don't be ridiculous. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry about what I said. Your cooking is fine. It's great. Just please, I'm having Thanksgiving dinner, Helena, with people who appreciate an invitation. What is that supposed to mean? I don't have time for... She stopped. Are you seriously going to do this right now? Are you seriously going to punish me when I'm asking for help? I'm not punishing you. I'm choosing myself. There's a difference. Fine. Her voice went cold. Fine. We'll figure it out ourselves. Don't bother coming for Christmas either. She hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, staring at the screen. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me wanted to get in the car and drive over there and fix everything like I always did. But the stronger part, the part that had grown over the past few days, said no. Not this time. David appeared in the kitchen doorway. Margot, you okay? I looked at him, then back at my guests. I think so, I said slowly. Actually, yes, I'm okay. He studied my face, then nodded. Dessert? Dessert, I agreed. We served 3 kinds of pie with fresh whipped cream. The debate about which was best grew louder and more animated. James insisted pecan was superior. Lee Wei championed pumpkin. Rachel split the difference and had all 3. Sophia got whipped cream all over her face and laughed so hard she hiccuped. Her brother tried to copy her and ended up with cream in his hair. Maria, watching them, looked lighter than she had all afternoon, like she'd set down something heavy. My phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. Text messages, one after another. Helena. This is unbelievable. Helena. You're really going to embarrass me like this? Helena. Fine. We'll figure it out ourselves. Don't expect any help from us. Then, from a number I didn't recognize but suspected was Brandon's. We need to talk about your will and the college fund we discussed for the children. I stared at that message for a long time. There it was. The real reason they kept me around. Financial backup. Emergency grandmother services. The Bank of Margot. Always open. Always ready to bail them out. I didn't respond. I didn't block the numbers. Not yet. But I turned my phone face down on the counter and went back to my guests. Grandma? A small voice said. I turned to find Sophia holding up her plate, eyes hopeful. Can I have more pie, please? The pumpkin one? Of course, sweetheart. I cut her another slice, bigger this time. She took it with both hands like it was precious, like it was treasure. This was what I'd been making all those pies for. Not for people who thought my cooking wasn't sophisticated enough. For people who understood that love tastes like brown sugar and cinnamon, and the particular sweetness of being wanted. After dinner, we played charades in the living room. Robert taught James and Lee Wei how to fold paper cranes from napkins, a skill Betty had taught him years ago. Jennifer and Tom fell asleep on my couch, exhausted but smiling, while everyone took turns holding baby Emma and cooing over her tiny fingers. As people started to leave, they hugged me. Really hugged me. Not the polite side hugs of social obligation, but the full, tight embraces of genuine gratitude. Thank you, Rachel said, crying again. You have no idea what this meant. I felt so alone here, and you just... She couldn't finish. Same time next year? Grace asked hopefully, her eyes bright. Absolutely, I heard myself say. And I meant it. Maria pressed a piece of paper into my hand. My new phone number, she said quietly, in case you ever need anything, in case you want to talk. You gave me more than dinner today. You gave me hope. As each person left, my house grew quieter, but somehow fuller. The tables in the backyard bore the evidence of the feast, Empty platters, scattered crumbs, stained napkins. The beautiful mess of people having been here, having been fed, having mattered. David was the last to leave. He stood on my porch, the evening air cool around us, looking at me with something in his eyes that made my heart do strange, unfamiliar things. "You were remarkable today," he said. "I just made too much food." "No," he stepped closer. "You turned pain into generosity. You showed 15 people, including me, that their presence matters, that they're worth someone's time and effort and care." He touched my hand gently. "Your daughter doesn't know what she's missing." After he left, I cleaned up, washed dishes, put away leftovers in containers I'd saved from throughout the year, found Lily's half-finished sweater where I'd left it. My phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Grandma?" A whisper. Young, scared. "It's Lily. I'm using Dad's old phone. Mom doesn't know I'm calling." My heart jumped into my throat. "Lily, sweetheart, are you okay?" "Grandma, I miss you." Lily's voice was small and tight, like she was trying not to cry. "I told Mom I wanted you at Thanksgiving. I told her it wasn't the same without you, but she said it was grown-up stuff and I wouldn't understand." I sank down onto my couch, still holding the dish towel I'd been using. "Oh, sweetheart, it's not your fault. None of this is your fault." "Mom's really mad," Lily sniffled. "She's been crying in her room. Dad's yelling at her about the clients leaving early. And Grandma Eleanor kept saying mean things about the food and about Mom not knowing how to plan properly. And—" her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I heard them talking about you. About money." My chest tightened. "What did they say?" "Dad said they needed to secure the college fund, and Mom said she'd handle it, and Grandma Eleanor said something about how you probably didn't have much anyway, being just a teacher." Lily's voice grew fierce. "But I don't care about money, Grandma. I just want to see you. The dinner was awful. Everything tasted weird, and grown-ups kept making fake laughing sounds, and I just wanted your turkey and your pie and you." I closed my eyes, tears sliding down my cheeks. "I wanted to be there with you too, baby. Can I still come visit you? Just me? And Noah?" I looked at the green sweater I'd been knitting for Noah, half finished, with tiny reindeer marching around the hem. At Lily's blue one with snowflakes, nearly complete. At the evidence of love that didn't care about sophistication or impressing anyone. "Always," I said firmly. "My door is always open for you and Noah. Always. Even though Mom and Dad were mean to you? You are not your parents' choices, Lily. I love you. That doesn't change. That will never change." "I love you too, Grandma." A pause. "I have to go. I hear Mom coming. But I'll call again, okay? When she's not looking." "Okay, sweetheart. Be good." After we hung up, I sat there in the quiet of my living room, surrounded by the remnants of the day. Empty pie plates. The faint smell of turkey and sage still hanging in the air. The beautiful exhaustion of having fed 15 people. And I made a decision. Monday morning, I sat in the law office of Robert Jameson, a man David had recommended. The office was small and unpretentious, wood paneling, family photos on the desk, a coffee maker in the corner that had seen better days. Nothing like the sleek glass and chrome offices where Helena worked. "Mrs. Whitmore," Mr. Jameson said, settling into his chair. "David mentioned you needed to update your estate planning." "Yes." I pulled out the folder I'd prepared. "I need to make some changes, significant ones." I'd spent Sunday writing everything out, thinking through every detail. What I wanted. What was fair. What would protect the people I loved without enabling the people who'd hurt me. First, the house. I want it to go to the Portland Domestic Violence Shelter, the organization that runs it specifically. Not sold, given to them to use however they see fit. Maybe as a transitional home, maybe as administrative offices. That's their decision. Mr. Jameson made notes. That's very generous. Second, my savings and retirement accounts. I want them put into a trust for my grandchildren, Lily and Noah Whitmore Pierce. Accessible when they turn 25, not a penny before, and not controlled by their parents in any way. Understood. Third, remove my daughter Helena Whitmore Pierce from all my accounts as emergency contact or beneficiary. Remove her husband Brandon Pierce as well. Replace them with David Thornton as primary and Rachel Torres as secondary. Mr. Jameson looked up. Are you sure about this, Mrs. Whitmore? This is quite a comprehensive change. I met his eyes. I'm giving my grandchildren security. I'm protecting myself from being treated like a bank account with a pulse. I'm choosing dignity over obligation. Yes, I'm sure. All right, then. Let's draw up the paperwork. The rest of that week passed in a strange suspension. I finished both sweaters, Lily's and Noah's, and started on matching scarves. I enrolled in the watercolor class at the community college that David had mentioned. I called the shelter and set up a schedule to teach cooking classes to residents twice a month. Rachel called me 3 times, once to thank me again, once to ask for my cranberry sauce recipe, and once just to talk about her anatomy exam. We spoke for an hour, and when we hung up, I realized I felt lighter, like I'd gained a daughter instead of losing one. Grace Patterson invited me over for coffee. We sat in her kitchen, and she showed me photos of her grandchildren in London and Sydney, children she'd only met twice because flights were expensive and her kids were busy. Do you think I'm a bad mother? She asked suddenly. Because I can't afford to visit more? Because they don't invite me? No, I said firmly. You're not a bad mother. You're a mother whose children made their own lives. That's what we raise them to do. We just hope they'll remember to look back once in a while. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Helena will come around. I saw how you looked when you mentioned her. You still love her. I do. But I love myself, too. And that's new for me. 1 week after Thanksgiving, on a gray Tuesday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. David was at a dentist appointment. Rachel had class. I opened the door, and there stood Helena. She looked terrible. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen her without it perfectly styled. She wore jeans and a wrinkled sweater, no makeup, dark circles under her eyes, her perfect facade cracking. "Mom," she said, "can we talk?" I hesitated, my hand on the door. Part of me wanted to say no. Part of me wanted to close the door and protect the peace I'd been building. But she was still my daughter, and she looked broken. "Come in," I said. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she'd done homework and learned to knead bread and decorated hundreds of cookies, where I'd fed her breakfast before school for 18 years, where I'd listened to her talk about her first crush, her college acceptance, her dreams of being successful, where I'd apparently failed to teach her that success wasn't the same as sophistication. Helena sat down, hands wrapped around the mug of coffee I'd poured for her, and stared into it for a long moment. "Brandon's clients canceled their contract," she said finally. They said if we treated family like that, they didn't want to work with us." "I'm sorry to hear that." She looked up sharply. "Are you, though?" I considered that. "Yes. I don't wish for your suffering, Helena. I wish you'd made different choices." I came to apologize. "Okay." The silence stretched. She seemed to be waiting for something. Forgiveness, maybe, or permission to continue, or for me to jump in and make it easier for her, the way I always had. I didn't. "Aren't you going to say anything?" she asked, frustration creeping into her voice. "What would you like me to say?" And then she broke, really broke, years of polish and performance cracking like ice. "I don't know." She stood up, started pacing. "I don't know how to fix this. I'm losing clients. Brandon's furious with me. His mother won't stop reminding me how I've humiliated the family. And now my own mother won't even—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "Won't even help me." "Won't even what?" I asked gently. "Save you? Rescue you? Make it all better like I always have?" Helena turned to face me, and I saw something in her expression I hadn't seen in years. Fear. Real, genuine fear. Not of losing money or status or clients, but of losing something deeper. Do you know what it's like? She said, her voice shaking. Growing up as the daughter of a widow schoolteacher, wearing thrift store clothes to a private school where everyone else had designer everything? I felt like I'd been slapped. You had a scholarship. You were brilliant. I was brilliant and poor, Mom. The words burst out of her like they'd been locked up for years. Do you know how many times I was uninvited from parties because parents didn't want the charity case there? Do you know what it's like to be 14 and hear your friend's mother say you don't fit with their crowd? To be 17 and have your boyfriend's parents suggest you're not their son's type of people? I stared at her, memories flooding back. Helena, at 15, suddenly refusing to let me pick her up from school events. Helena, at 16, lying about why she couldn't go to certain sleepovers. Helena, at 17, breaking up with that boy she'd seemed to really like, Patrick, Peter, and refusing to talk about why. I thought it was normal teenage stuff. I thought she was just growing up, pulling away the way teenagers do. I didn't know, I whispered. I couldn't tell you. Helena sat back down, shoulders slumped. You were working so hard, taking on extra tutoring just to afford my school supplies. I saw you mending your own clothes so you could buy me new ones for the school dance. How could I tell you that none of it was enough? That I was still the poor kid, the charity case, the one who didn't belong? Oh, Helena. So I spent 20 years climbing out of that hole. Her voice was bitter now. Building a life where no one could look down on me, where I belonged, where I fit. I married Brandon, joined the country club, bought the big house, wore the right clothes, said the right things. I became the person I thought I needed to be. And where did I fit into that person? I asked quietly. She looked at me and her eyes filled with tears. You didn't. You reminded me of everything I was trying to escape. Every time Eleanor Pierce looked at you with that condescending smile, every time she made some comment about simple tastes or humble backgrounds, I felt like that 14-year-old girl again. The one who didn't belong. The one who wasn't good enough. So you tried to erase me. I tried to erase the part of me that felt ashamed. She was crying now, really crying. And I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Because the worst part is, it didn't work. When everything fell apart on Thanksgiving, when the caterer failed and Eleanor was being horrible and the clients were judging us, the only person I wanted was you. And you weren't there, because I'd pushed you away. I felt my own tears coming. I wasn't there because you told me I wasn't good enough. I know, her voice broke. I know I did, and I was wrong. God, I was so wrong. We sat there, both crying, the kitchen quiet except for our ragged breathing. Outside I could hear a dog barking, a car passing. Normal life continuing while we sat in the wreckage of ours. Finally I spoke. Helena, I forgive you. She looked up, hope flickering across her face. But, I continued carefully, forgiveness doesn't mean going back to how things were. What does that mean? It means I love you. You're my daughter. That will never change. I reached across the table, took her hand. But I won't be your backup plan anymore. I won't be the person you hide until you need something. I won't make myself smaller so you can feel bigger. I don't want that either, she said quickly. I want my mom back. I want to be able to call you without feeling like I have to apologize for who you are. I want Lily and Noah to know their grandmother. I want to remember why I used to love Thanksgiving instead of dreading it. Then you need to decide, I said. Do you want a mother? Or do you want a resource? Because I can't be both anymore. She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was small. I don't know how to separate the two. You've always been both. It was the most honest thing she'd said. And it hurt, but it was also true. And that's my fault too, I admitted. I taught you to use me, by always being available, always fixing things, always sacrificing myself to make your life easier. I taught you that my value was in what I could do for you, not in who I was. So what now? Helena asked. Where do we go from here? I took a deep breath. Now we start over, slowly. You respect my boundaries. You include me in your life because you want me there, not because you need me to fix something or provide something, and you never ever make me feel like I'm not good enough again. And if I mess up, then I'll tell you, and you'll listen. Because relationships aren't about being perfect, Helena. They're about being honest. They're about showing up even when it's hard. They're about loving people for who they are, not what they can do for you. Helena nodded slowly. Then she noticed the knitting basket by my chair. What are you working on? I pulled out Noah's sweater, forest green with reindeer marching around the hem. Nearly finished now. You're still making them sweaters, she said, her voice breaking. After everything I said, after I uninvited you, you're still knitting for my kids. They're children. They deserve consistency. They deserve to know that love isn't conditional, that even when adults are struggling, they're still loved. Can you teach me? The question came out barely above a whisper. Teach you what? To knit. I want to learn. She gestured helplessly. I want to be part of this. Part of the things that matter instead of the things that impress people. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, saw past the expensive clothes and the perfect life to the scared girl underneath, the one who'd spent 20 years trying to belong and had lost herself in the process. Maybe, I said, but not today. Today you need to go home and have some hard conversations. With Brandon about his mother's influence. With Eleanor about her judgment. With yourself about what kind of life you actually want. And then, we'll see. Call me next week. We'll have coffee, just you and me. And we'll talk. Really talk, not the surface stuff. Can I bring Lily and Noah to visit for Christmas? I thought about the sweaters, nearly finished, about the baking I'd been planning, about David's invitation to spend Christmas with him and how I'd been considering it. Let me think about it, I said. I'll let you know. Helena looked hurt, but she nodded. Okay, that's fair. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. Mom, the people at your Thanksgiving, who were they? People who needed somewhere to go. Students far from home. Families from the shelter. Neighbors who were alone. And they were grateful for your cooking? They appreciated being wanted, I said. That's what they were grateful for. Helena nodded slowly. I'm going to do better, I promise. Don't promise, just do it. After she left, I sat at the table for a long time, looking at Noah's sweater, at Lily's finished one waiting to be wrapped. My phone rang. David. How are you? He asked. Helena was here. And we're not fixed, but maybe we're starting to heal. That's good. That's a start. He paused. I'm making soup. Want to come over for dinner? Nothing fancy. Just chicken noodle and some of that bread from the bakery you like. I smiled. I'd love that. 3 weeks later, December 18th, the doorbell rang at exactly 3 o'clock, just like Helena had promised when she called to confirm. I opened it to find Lily and Noah on my doorstep, bundled in winter coats, faces bright with excitement. Grandma! Lily threw herself at me, hugging tight. Noah followed, wrapping his arms around my waist. Behind them, Helena stood with overnight bags. She looked better than she had 3 weeks ago, more rested, more herself somehow. Hi, Mom. Hi, honey, come in. It's cold out there. The kids ran inside, immediately heading for the kitchen where I'd set out cookie decorating supplies. Helena followed more slowly, setting down the bags. I brought something, she said, pulling out a container. Cranberry sauce. I made it myself, from your recipe. I opened it, smelled the familiar tang of oranges and cranberries. How did it turn out? Not as good as yours, but it's edible. She smiled, tentative. I'm learning. Over the next hour, we decorated cookies. Lily made elaborate snowflakes with too much icing. Noah created what he claimed was a reindeer, but looked more like a green blob. Helena worked carefully on a star, her lawyer precision showing. Grandma, Lily said, licking icing off her fingers, Can we come back for Christmas? I looked at Helena. We'd been talking once a week, careful conversations over coffee. She'd told me about starting therapy, about setting boundaries with Eleanor, about having hard conversations with Brandon that were making their marriage better, slowly. Your mom and I are still figuring things out, I said carefully. But we're working on it, Helena added quickly. Right, Mom? Right. Actually, I said, making a decision, I was thinking, maybe you could all come for Christmas Eve. Just the four of you. No Brandon's parents, no fancy caterer. Just us. Simple dinner, cookie decorating. Maybe David could join us. He's become a good friend. Lily's eyes went wide. Really? Just us? Just us. Helena's eyes filled with tears. I'd like that. We'd all like that. Later, after the kids were asleep in my guest room and Helena was getting ready to leave, she paused at the door. Mom? I got a call from Rachel Torres. She said she's been having coffee with you. She has. She's a lovely young woman. She told me you've been helping her figure out how to balance medical school with actually having a life, that you've been kind of mentoring her. I shrugged. We just talk. She reminds me of you at that age, brilliant and driven and terrified of failing. Helena was quiet. Does she know about what happened between us? She knows we're working through some things. She also knows I think you're an incredible lawyer and a complicated person, and that relationships are messy. And she still wants to know you? Apparently complex mothers are her specialty. Helena laughed, a real laugh, the kind I hadn't heard from her in years. I'm glad you have her, and David, and Grace and Robert and all those people. I'm glad you're not alone. I'm glad too. After she left, I went back inside to check on the kids. Lily and Noah were both asleep, Noah clutching the stuffed rabbit he'd had since he was a baby, Lily sprawled across the bed like she owned the world. I pulled the sweaters from my closet, both finished now, carefully wrapped. I'd give them to the kids for Christmas, along with a photo album I'd been making, not of past Thanksgivings, but of new memories, pictures of this year's Thanksgiving guests, of David and me at our watercolor class, of Grace and me at the shelter, teaching cooking classes, of a life that wasn't about being needed, but about choosing connection. My phone buzzed, a text from Rachel. How did it go with Helena? I typed back. Baby steps, but forward ones. That's all any of us can do, she replied. See you Thursday for cooking class? Wouldn't miss it. I looked around my quiet house, at the cookie crumbs on the kitchen table, at the sweaters waiting to be given, at the evidence of life happening messily and imperfectly and beautifully. This wasn't the Thanksgiving I'd planned. This wasn't the family I'd imagined. But it was real. It was mine. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. The backyard was full of tables again, but this time there were 25 people instead of 15. The original crew had returned. Rachel, now finishing her 3rd year of medical school, James and Lee Way, both graduated and working in Portland, Grace, Robert, Maria, and her kids, Jennifer and Tom with not-so-baby Emma toddling around, and new faces. Robert's daughter, who'd flown in from Seattle to meet the woman who brought my dad back to life. 2 more families from the shelter. A handful of Rachel's classmates who'd heard about Dr. Torres's legendary Thanksgiving connection. And at the main table, Helena and Brandon with Lily and Noah. Helena was helping me bring out dishes, not fancy catered food, but the same recipes I'd been making for 43 years. She'd made the cranberry sauce again, better this time. Brandon had attempted Parker House rolls. They were lopsided but edible. Lily and Noah had helped make pie crust, their hands covered in flour. Eleanor Pierce had not been invited. That was a boundary Helena had finally set. Is this okay? Helena asked quietly as we set down the turkey. Us being here with all your other guests? It's perfect, I said. And I meant it. David appeared at my elbow. We'd been dating officially for 6 months now, taking things slow. 2 people who'd learned that life could surprise you, even in your late 60s. Ready? He asked. I looked around at the tables, at strangers who'd become friends, at family who'd learned to show up honestly, at a celebration that wasn't about sophistication or impressing anyone, but about connection. "Ready," I said. We gathered everyone for the blessing. This year, I didn't give it alone. "I'll start," I said. "Last year, I learned that love isn't about sacrificing yourself until there's nothing left. It's about creating space for everyone to be whole. Thank you all for teaching me that." Rachel stood next. "I learned that family isn't just biology. It's who shows up, who sees you, who feeds you, literally and metaphorically." Then, unexpectedly, Helena stood. Her voice shook slightly, but she spoke clearly. "I learned that sophistication isn't about impressing people with what you have. It's about being real enough to connect with them. And I learned that the most valuable thing my mother ever gave me wasn't her cooking, or her help, or her resources." She looked at me, tears in her eyes. It was her honesty, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. Our eyes met across the table. Not perfect, still healing, but honest. The meal was chaos and laughter and spilled drinks and Sophia asking for extra marshmallows, which she still got. It was James arguing with Lee Wei about pie rankings while Rachel refereed. It was Robert teaching Noah how to fold napkins into swans while Emma tried to eat hers. It was Grace and Maria planning a cooking class for the shelter that would happen next month. It was Helena sitting next to me, our shoulders touching, watching Lily show off her knitting project, a lumpy scarf she'd made with her mother in the weekly lessons they'd been taking together. "I'm not very good yet," Helena admitted, looking at the scarf. "You're learning," I said, she said. "That's what matters." As the sun set and candles were lit and pie was served, I caught David's eye across the table. He smiled, raised his wine glass slightly. I smiled back. 44 Thanksgivings. The first 42, I'd tried to be perfect, to be everything to everyone, to measure my worth by how needed I was. The 43rd, I'd learned to choose myself. And this one, the 44th, I was learning that you could choose yourself and choose connection. That boundaries and love weren't opposites. That healing didn't mean forgetting or pretending everything was fine. It meant showing up honestly and doing the work and believing that people, even complicated people, even people who'd hurt you, could grow. Later, as guests were leaving and Helena was packing up the kids, Lily ran back to hug me one more time. "Grandma," she whispered, "this is what Thanksgiving should always be like." "It is now, sweetheart," I said. "It is now." After everyone left, David and I stood in my backyard, looking at the empty tables and scattered leaves and the beautiful mess of it all. "Another successful year," he said, putting his arm around me. I leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence, the comfort of knowing I wasn't alone, but also wasn't defined by not being alone. "You know what I'm grateful for?" I said. "What?" "For the phone call that broke my heart, because it forced me to find a bigger one." He kissed my forehead. "Your heart was always big enough, Margot. You just needed to save room in it for yourself." As we walked inside, I looked back once more at the tables, at the evidence of people having been here, having been fed, having mattered. And I thought, this is what love looks like when it's not conditional. When it's not about being needed, but about choosing to show up. When it's not about being sophisticated or perfect, but about being real. This is what it looks like when you set a table for people who actually want to sit at it. And that was worth everything.